Hey, so I read this post on Reddit, and I want to talk about a little bit about this. The title is "When Does Self-Awareness Becomes a Trap Instead of Individuation?" I'm curious how people here think about this. Sometimes it feels like self-awareness increases. You can describe your patterns, name your complexes, explain your behavior, but your life doesn't actually change. It becomes a loop. More insight, more narration, same structure. In Jungian terms, what's happening when insight doesn't transform anything? What tends to break the loop in your experience? Dream work, active imagination, boundaries, conflict, relationship friction, something else. Then another person commented, from my experience, I think a very important part of the journey is to start taking action after those insights. So, so here's the thing. Uh, this trap is something that is very common. I think that if you look at the non-dual community, let's not generalize here, but the idea is if you get used to identify your patterns, maybe for some time you may get stuck in a stage where you kind of take pride in identifying those patterns and but you don't actually do anything to change them, you know. And then the other person said, well, you need to take action so that you can transcend those patterns. Because if you don't do anything different, those patterns are going to keep happening. And yeah, that's pretty much the case. But sometimes you don't identify, you don't realize that you need to do something different, right? And to that, I say it is a divine timing, a process where you live and you realize the pattern, but you don't have the capacity to understand yet that you need to change it, that you have some agency in this process and that you can choose to not repeat the pattern. While you don't realize that you have agency, you don't have agency, basically. And so once you repeat the pattern uh, enough times, you might realize that this has become another pattern. The pattern of identifying the pattern but not doing anything to change it or change its consequences. And so when you realize this broader pattern, like I'm thinking about those, I forgot the name, but it's some mathematical concept where there's this thing and there's this other thing that covers it basically. Once you identify this broader pattern, it becomes easier to change it because now you just say, okay, man, like I'm doing this, like I'm repeating this, and I'm just tired of it right now. Why am I going to keep doing this, basically? So this idea of you getting tired of the pattern, I mean, there's so many variables that can determine how much time you're gonna have to live that pattern in order to transcend it. I guess this is what you can call karma. Or so here's the thing: we need to get practical at some point right now, because it's very hard to be able to say, like, how much time or how many times are you going to keep repeating that in order to be able to transcend it? Like, that's that's out of our control. Basically, you need to leave that up to God. We can waste time trying to determine how many time it's gonna take. Takes how much time it takes. Now, practical. What can we do to speed this up? Well, this is what most spiritual teachings speak about, and I guess when you start living this, you naturally start to want to implement sadhana in your life. You want to implement um, a spiritual practice, because you realize that life is full of those patterns, and maybe all of life is a pattern. I think I heard, I think it was Nisargadatta Maharaj saying something like, or Maharshi, I don't know. He said, "You are a pattern." You know. Anyways, life is full of those patterns. What can we do to change them, or not to change them, but to transcend them? To let go of the small patterns, to start going up and realizing the patterns, which are infinite, basically. And I guess this is what you could call the process of self-realization. Because uh, individuation or self-integration, those are all concepts to determine the idea that once you are aware of enough complexes and patterns inside you, and you start to you know see them to completion, meaning you understand what they mean, where they come from, so they dissolve the charge that they have on you, and they basically cease to exist. Or you reach a state where you realize when certain tendencies start to arrive, and that makes it easier to choose another way, another path. And so in time, if you also consider I think it's neuroplasticity, I guess you can construct new pathways, and that makes it so that you don't have to live that way anymore. And and so again, going back to this sadhana or spiritual practice idea, what we are doing with spiritual practice is we are introducing a another pattern into our lives, another habit, which is the spiritual practice. But this habit, at first, it is a pattern, it is our habits. Afterwards, it comes naturally, because what we are doing with a spiritual practice is you are opening yourself up, you are growing your consciousness, and that is going to make you able to see the patterns more clearly. And there are many, many spiritual practices. It's not like a defined path. You can try to find whatever works for you. Meditate, take some medicine, but do that on your own uh, agency. Take your time to research about it. Don't simply go and take uh, some external substance without researching about what it can do to your body and your mind and your psyche. I'm just mentioning this because I have I have experienced it with it a couple times, and it was very good to me. But at the same time, it caused some another other issues in my life. Like, I could say, brought more chaos, basically, but brought more more things for me to deal with, and that may make your physical materialistic life be kind of unbalanced or unstable. Those are all things you need to take into consideration. Anyways, the idea is to do something that is going to be able to help you look at yourself in third view, look at your patterns. Because here's the thing, right? Once you if you're identified with a pattern, you can't do anything about it. You cannot change what you don't know is there, right? I guess this is why once you are uh, at a certain level of spiritual maturity, I guess this is why compassion becomes like something that you see when you look at a guru, for example, because there is the person that's doing a harmful pattern, whether to herself or to other people, is they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the harm that they're creating. If they knew, I mean, unless they were a psychopath, they wouldn't do it anymore. They didn't feel what it's like to be in the other person's place or in their own place. See you next video.